here can go back and look at it again and refresh their minds and get to hear Carol again. And those that weren't able to be, she's going to introduce herself and tell her a little bit about about herself. We will have the chat open, and we will, Carol will talk to you about asking questions and all that stuff. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Carol.
Thanks, Mary Jo. I sure appreciate that nice, warm introduction. I am Carol Tappin. I'm the Youth Transition Specialist at Grants Pass High School in Southern Oregon. I am here today to share with you guys a little bit about job development, and I have a PowerPoint that I'll open up in just a second, but I wanted to start off with two little polls. It's two quick questions just to see where you guys are at on the subject of job development. So Garrett, can we do the first one? The first one's, what's your level of job development experience? Rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10. 10 being, I'm awesome, I'm the best, I totally know what I'm doing. 1 being, what's job development? I'm even doing it. Give you a few seconds there. And I do have to say, this is my first time presenting in such a large group, and so on Zoom. So if I make any goofs, just bear with me. And Garrett, will it show me the poll results or? Okay. Sweet. Oh, we have a wide variety. Couple 1s, 2s, and 3s, but most people are around 4s and 5s. So you're familiar with the topic, but could use some more information maybe. Maybe some practice. It's kind of hard in these COVID times. We'll talk about that. Awesome. And we have some people down on the 9s, 8s, 9s, and 10s. Great. We have a good variety. So some of you 10s might be a little bored with what I'm saying, but maybe you'll learn something new. And I hope that it's helpful. And so the next poll, just to see, and this is an easy one, a yes or no. Does the subject of job development scare you? Or is it nerve-wracking, intimidating, whatever kind of word? I'm going to answer that one too.
Ooh, look at them all come.
Wow.
50. Oh, good job. Cool. 59 out of 72, 81%. Boy, we're all into, after the election, we're all into our percentages and numbers. Those people were doing math quick.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it looks like 39% of you said yes, it's a little intimidating. 61 said no. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. I rated myself a 9. I'm really comfortable in job development, but I still said yes, that it's intimidating, because sometimes I still get the pre-jitters to go in and talk to businesses or talk about job development, even though I've done it for a long time. And I'll share with you now about that. So I'm just going to open up my PowerPoint. Bear with me just a sec. Put it on presentation. Can you guys see my PowerPoint good? All right. Thank you for the thumbs up. Appreciate it. So this is job development crash course. Obviously, job development's a huge subject, and there's no way for me to teach it in 1 hour. But today we're going to focus on learning a step-by-step process, which is the one I use and can see myself using in YTP, but mostly to gain ideas to develop your own style of job development. I really am a firm believer that we all kind of do it differently. There's no one way to do it, and that we build that around our community and the students that we're providing these services for. So this is just a foundation starting block. to get you going and thinking about how you want your step-to-step process to look like. If you have any questions during this presentation, please feel free to put it in the chat. There's a lot of us on here, and I would say, me personally, I would just be like, hey, raise your hand, jump in, have a question. But just so we can ensure, that timely that we can get through all this information, Mary Jo has said that she's going to watch the chat for me. So if you have a question, please feel free. At the end, I will have a questions section, and then we can just kind of raise our hand and shout out. But yeah, let's get going. So first of all, who am I to tell you about job development? You probably may not even recognize me. I am fairly new to YTP. I was hired in the end of January, only on campus for a few weeks before the pandemic hit. So who am I? But for the past 8 years, I have been working in the adult employment nonprofit sector for a lot of nonprofits in this area as a job developer, a contracted job developer with VR. I have developed relationships in communities to create opportunities for the past 8 years. I have developed and taught classes about employability. I have worked with many people facing different barriers to employment. I have managed a team of job coaches and completed many discovery profiles for adults in our community. And I have a true commitment to find people's abilities rather than their disabilities. So, are you ready? So this is kind of like my fun first steps, starting that foundation. So once you've met with a student and you have determined that they are a good fit for YTP and they have been found eligible for VR, you're ready to start job developing. Remember that we help a lot of students in our schools, a huge number, but really we're talking about job development for the core students that we have in VR and YTP. The big thing, obviously, is know their VR plan goal. Work with your VR counselor and really understand that goal and make sure that it's really matching your students or your person's wants and wishes as well. My next little square here is create a list of employers. This is kind of fun. 10 plus 10 equals 2? Not really, but I'll teach you a little bit about this mindset I have. I sit with my student and I say, what are the 10 places you want to work, right? It's kind of an open question. Maybe look at the demographics of where they live, how they're going to, get to work plays a part in this. But I have them come up with at least 10 employers that they would be interested in looking at for employment. And then the other 10, that second 10, is for your plan B. So your plan A is where they really want to work. Your plan B are like businesses, but or maybe could offer the same type of jobs, but they didn't come up with that particular name of business. So maybe they really want to work at 7-Eleven. But in our area, there's a place called Crown Market. It's kind of a convenience store as well. It's very much like 7-Eleven, but maybe they didn't think of it. So I'd be like, okay, our plan B would be Crown Market. And then out of those 20 employers that you jot down on your list, that's going to be your starting block to where you're going to develop. You're going to get hopefully 2 opportunities. So that's that 10 plus 10 equals 2. I like to play a little bit of a numbers game and I like to have good odds in my favor. So of course I want that 2 larger, but at least 2 is good. Have that master application and resume ready. Sometimes I'm job developing, I might hit an employer that's great and wonderful and wants to talk to me right off the bat. I want to have those things ready to hand them or talk to them about while I'm there. Types of support. Going into job development, know what kind of support your student's going to need. Have an idea of that before you start going out and talking to employers so that you can proactively think about the supports when you're developing the job or talking to an employer about the job. Obviously, one of those big supports we talk about often are job coaches. What is a job coach and do they need a job coach? that's going to be a conversation with your VR counselor, the person that you're supporting, and then ultimately the business that they're going to be involved in. So just know those kind of supports before you go out. And then how will the student gain independence on the job site? With those supports in mind, how can you grow and how can they grow those independence on the job site? And then also, last but not least, transportation and hours. Know what your student needs hour-wise. If they're still, a senior in high school and they are wanting to work after school or weekends, know their availability. So you can talk to the employer about that. And transportation, obviously that wouldn't be an employer's need, but more so, if they're riding a bicycle, how far away from their home can they ride that bicycle? Because that's going to hone in where you search for job development or for jobs. Okay, so how to approach businesses, the scary part. I don't know if you're anything like me, but I still get nervous to do this, even after 8 years of job development. And I've approached thousands of businesses in this area. They all know me. How do we do that? And what does that look like? So I love this thing. We've all talked about the elevator pitch or the elevator speech. We probably all have a good idea of what that is, 20 to 30 seconds, with a clear message. I say there is something called the perfect pitch, which is 3 parts. You want to introduce yourself. What are you currently looking for? And maybe a long-term goal if it applies. And then ask. Have that strong close. Ask for what you are looking for. So I made a little example, and I'll try to read it without messing up. It's like a wonderful skill set I don't have. Let's see. Move my little thing. Sorry. So hello, my name is Carol. I'm a youth transition specialist at Grants Pass High School. I work with students to help them prepare and gain employment opportunities. I have several students that are ready to work and have shown interest in the hospitality industry. And I'd like to set up a time to discuss opportunities for them and explain the value for your business. So this one obviously has an intro, my name, where I work and what school I'm kind of coming from. It talks about what I do. I work with students. I help them prepare, and I help them gain opportunities. And then I have students that are ready to work and have shown interest in hospitality is just an example, but the hospitality industry. And I'd like to set up a time. That's that strong close. I'm asking, I'd like to set up a time to discuss opportunities for them and explain the value of us to your business. Now, obviously, that's just an example. It's obviously will vary for each person and what you're looking for. But I practice that. And as silly as it sounds, I practice it often, and I practice it anytime and everywhere I can. So whether I'm sitting on a board, I sit on a board here locally for a theater group, and I practice it with them all the time. I'm always talking about YTP and what am I doing and what am I looking for? Because you never know where an opportunity will come from. So use this to talk to businesses, use this to talk to your community, use this as often as you can, because the more you talk about it, the more comfortable these elevator pitches will get. And then sometimes you'll walk into a business and you kind of throw this out there and they're like, okay, yeah, let's talk. You got a minute right now? Yeah, I do. So be prepared with some follow-up questions or conversation enhancers, is what I like to call them, to kind of dig in deeper, or, they might throw out a question too. So obviously there's some finesse in this conversation, but I just put down some examples. Like, are you familiar or have you had experiences with the youth transition in Oregon? Have you ever employed a student or part-time employee? Some businesses only hire full-time employees. So that's a good thing to ask right off the bat. Have you ever worked with somebody with barriers to employment or limitations? Now, this is somebody that's interested talking to me. I'd then bring up this. I never really walk in and say, my name's Carol and I work with people with barriers. I don't do that. As you notice in my elevator pitch, I actually didn't even say barriers whatsoever. I work with students. Just like every other employee, we all have barriers, right? We all have limitations and stuff. So I don't really put that out from the get-go. But I can ask about it later if they're giving me the opportunity to talk. I put a little note on here and we'll talk about it later in the presentation, but I said, please do not say disabled. We use person first language when we're job developing, and we'll go into that a little bit more. And then, have you experienced working with an employment professional to help find the right fit for your jobs? So this brings into a little point, and I love to try to fit this in as much as possible with employers, is I want them to view me as someone they can trust that has their interests in mind, and I am looking for the right person for the job that they need. And we will talk about this throughout the whole hour. You'll be like, okay, Carol, I get it. But yeah. I'm sorry, I have to move my window a lot. It's fun presenting. So this is a little bit about person first language. I'm sure this is not a new topic, but I just want to touch on it a little bit, especially when job developing. Please, please, please use person first language. It really sets a strong presence when we use that language for the employer to use that language and to think that way. You will walk into businesses that this is maybe a new concept. And so you're introducing this concept. So introduce it strong and do it as well. Tell what the person experiences rather than what the person is. And emphasize abilities, not limitations, or just leave it completely out. I use the word barriers, not disabilities, because like I said before, we all have barriers to employment. That's how we work through those barriers. And as a trusted help to the employer for finding the right employees, I help eliminate those barriers or help come up with ideas to work within those barriers so that they are successful at their job placement. Okay, I'm going too fast, let me know. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this a lot, but it's so important. This is how I job develop. Like I said before, you're going to, figure out your own way of job developing. But for me, relationship is key. Okay, I job develop, but I actually relationship develop. I don't walk into a business saying, hey, I want a job for this person. Of course, I have that in my mind, right? I'm thinking that I'm looking for the job, I'm looking for the person, but that's not the only reason I'm in there. And I'll explain why. I have the student needs, but I also need to know what the business needs. Because in the long run and in the long term of things, if you're there for the business as much as you're there for the student, you will find more than one opportunity. When you build that relationship with the business, even if that first student doesn't work out, because hey, not every job is gonna work out, you will still have that good foundation of support where neither the student gets left behind or the business. And they're gonna offer more opportunities constantly. I have businesses that still call me, even though I don't work for, that was like 4 employers ago. They still call me and say, hey, Carol, you got somebody that could do this job? I'm like, I don't even work in Medford anymore. I work in Grants Pass, but let me see what I can put together. So there's those relationships will last forever. And it has to be a win-win. I put that at the very top of the pyramid because that's your goal, is that both are feeling supported and valued, and they're both happy, right? Good fit, happy business, happy student, win-win. So, and of course, it's always around finding more than one opportunity. Okay, so there are many ways to approach a business, especially right now because of COVID. This might look a little different for everybody. Depends on your area, depends on what type of businesses you're going to. But there's really kind of 4 main ways. And if someone else has an idea, you can put it in the chat. There's the traditional cold call. That's how I was taught from the very get-go. Cold call 50 businesses a week, and you're going to get an appointment with so many. It still works. It's a great method, especially now if there's limitations on going into the business in person. Me personally, I'm a little warmer, so I like to do the warm call, and that's visit in person. I mean, as a YTP specialist, 70% of your time should be spent in the community. You can make time for this. At understanding that COVID is there's a pause right now and all this stuff, but going forward, knowing, visiting in person, I've always had really, really good experiences. I don't know, I'm, yeah, I love being in person. Obviously, probably as you can tell on Zoom, not so great on Zoom, great in person, I promise. Use your connections. I always like if someone says, "Oh, I'm interested in somebody, working for a manufacturer." I'm like, who do I know that works in manufacturing? And who do they know that works there that I want to be at? So I try to use my connections to try to get into a business without even having to do the cold call or the warm call. I only have, I talk to whoever I know, my connection. And then of course, email, it's kind of a cold call situation, but it's a little different. How I used to do this was I had like a standard email that I would change a few things, kind of like a cover letter that you'd send out with a resume. But it followed the elevator pitch, where an introduction, I tell them a little bit about my program, how I can help them pre-vet employees. And then I ask them something at the end, like, can I set up a time to come in and talk to you? I'd love to share more about my program in person. I'd love to set up an interview for blah, 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 blah. You know how that goes. And then I can kind of send that out to, sky's the limit, as many businesses as I want. So if I have a student that wants to work in hospitality, well, I Google hospitality businesses or hotels in Medford or Grants Pass, and that brings me up a whole list of people to start emailing, right? So I can do that pretty quick and save some time. And I'm usually intermixing these. It's not just one way or, one way. I mix them. So I might call ahead, say, hey, so this is my name and this is what I'm, can I speak to the hiring manager, that type of thing. And then I might go in person and visit if maybe I left a message and nobody ever got back to me. My next step is maybe going in person. Maybe it's following up with an email. These can all kind of go in. Maybe I email and stop in. It can all be mixed. So ideas to start a conversation. This kind of goes in a little bit with all of these areas that I just talked about. You're going to see some of these things at any way you try to approach a business. So how do you start that conversation? How do you get to your elevator pitch? Little key things is be prepared for gatekeepers. They're everywhere. Gatekeepers are the people that maybe you see first. It could be a receptionist. It could be an office manager. You name it. It could be the person that you get to see, but your hiring manager's way back there. So I ask for if I can talk to the hiring manager or at least for their information. If they're unavailable, I'm like, can I get their email? How do I follow up? That kind of stuff. I put a little thing in there saying compliments help. So I like to be really, really nice when I go into these places. I like to compliment. Oh, this is beautiful. Oh my gosh, I love your guys' office. Or I love the store. I shop here. It's my favorite. Compliments help. Be sweet as can be. That's my personal way to get in. I just wanted to share it with you. That's kind of, yeah. And listen to the needs of the employer and your student needs. Obviously, keep them in your head as you're listening, but really listen to those employers' needs. And just make really good note of that because those two have to mesh to be the perfect fit. And then have an example, just kind of to start the conversation, have an example of a past successful, relatable story. And if you're new at job development, maybe you don't have one of these, talk about how the student has been successful in your program. Maybe even if you've got to work with them for 6 months, what did it look like when they first started your program? And what does it look like now? How success has grown? I love to keep a few of these success stories in my back pocket, just so I can kind of expand the mind of the business and show them that we can be a really big asset to them and help them find the right employees without any cost. I mean, we're a great resource for them. And then if they're busy or not there, just be prepared to leave cards and materials. I don't know if maybe you need to get cards or maybe like rack cards, something like that, so that you can leave behind if they are not available. And I always say, leave ideas and impressions. So if you meet a gatekeeper, but they're willing to listen to you, talk to them, listen to them, because you never know. Maybe they really work hand in hand with the hiring manager. Maybe they're not the actual decision maker in the process, but they can definitely aid you in getting to that decision maker. So leave ideas, leave impressions, and make sure that the next time you come in to visit, they are excited to see you and you're welcome into their business. With follow-up, so say you do a call or you walk in and you need to follow up because maybe they weren't available or the person that you needed to talk to wasn't there at the time. Or even if they're just busy. Sometimes I get a hiring manager that says, I can't right now. I'm really busy. I'm working on, can you come back? Definitely, all the time. So these are a few little kind of scenarios that could happen. And I just put be reliable. So if the answer is no, it's clearly no, like, no, I'm not at this time. Or just no, let's start with that first. Sorry, I'm jumping. If it's clearly no, I say don't follow up until like management changes, or give it some time, like a greater amount of time, 6 months to a year. Sometimes you'll get really clear, no, have a great day. Okay, thanks. Have a great day. Thanks for taking your time and talking to me. I still stay nice and respectful, but I probably wouldn't follow up for a clear no. If they say not at this time, ask them when they would like you to follow up. That is totally okay. When would you like me to follow up? If right now is a bad time, I totally understand. When's a better time for me to stop by? Can I make an appointment with you? Give me your card. I'll call you later or email you and we can set up a time. That's always respectful and wonderful. You'll get good reactions from that. If the answer is yes, be prepared to present them with the next steps. Okay, great. Oh, we're on board. Let's talk. Let's look at jobs. They might walk around. I have literally walked into a business, never walking in before, and they took me on a whole tour. Oh, this job does this, just this job does this. I was ready to write it all down and take note, because the next time I was going to see them, I'm hopefully bringing them employees, right? So be prepared. Handling rejection. This is the sad or scariest part of it. Like I said in the beginning of our time together, I told you these relationships take time. Don't walk in with the idea that you will get an opportunity right off the bat. But rather be open to opening the door of communication. Sorry, why I trip over my tongue. Be open to just talking about who you are, what you've done in your program, how the program can help the employer. It takes time. They will build trust in you if you are continuous and reliable and respectful all the time. With rejections, respect their time and yours. If it's a flat out no, don't bug them. There's other employers out there. Don't waste yours either. Don't spin your wheels trying to go back into these businesses that are just not allowing you in. There's been businesses in the past where I was like, no, this person really wants to work here. And my mind was so set on it. I wasted time and energy and sadness because I didn't get in there. when really there was another company that offered the same opportunities and, interest for that person, that I was just kind of stuck and wasting time. Be respectful always, even if a business is rude, which has happened before to me. um, I'm always respectful and I'm always thankful. So just be thankful always. Just say thank you for your time. Thank you for talking to me. However you express that, just be thankful always. Um, don't take it personal. Running a business, no matter the size, is hard and stressful. If a business you feel like they're kind of blowing you off, like, oh, not right now, it's not the time, don't take it personal. They probably are saying, I'm stressed, I need help. Hopefully, in the future, we get to help them relieve that stress with a great employee. But at this time, it's hard and stressful. Ask to come back another time. Ask for their information so you can talk to them about it later. Keep in mind, there are many of different organizations that serve many different populations that are doing what we do, job development, going and talking, building opportunities, building relationships. We are not the only people out there doing that. So I wanted to put a little note in here. Just keep that in mind as you are job developing. And I just have a funny little story I'll tell you, just because everyone might get this, but some people might be like, wait, what? I worked for a nonprofit in Grants Pass, and one of the things that I was in charge of was discovery profiles through the state. They were these really great experiences that helped people gain more of an in-depth look of what they're really good at and what they wanted to do for their career. Long story short, I had this wonderful business. She even made me a name badge. I was in there so much, made me a name badge. I would go in with the person that I was serving, and we'd do lots of different types of jobs. We kind of try them out, see how they liked them. Well, one day she calls me at the office, and we were there. Me and my discovery candidates were there probably 3 or 4 times a week. Like, she was very used to my face. She calls me one day and she's like, Carol, I'm really frustrated. And I go, well, what's wrong? What's up? And she goes, well, you keep sending people in asking me for jobs. And I told you I don't have any jobs. And I feel bad because they're bringing in people and I'm having to reject them to their face that I'm not hiring. And I was like, wait, I'm not. No, that would be me. I would bug you for jobs. I promise. That's my job. Nobody's doing that from here. But what happened was there was other organizations looking for jobs, and she kind of like lumped us all in together and then got frustrated with me that I kept sending people in. So just keep in mind, it's a little frustrating. It can be frustrating for businesses. They obviously don't want to be mean. The majority of people never want to say no, but there are multiple people coming at them, even if it's just for donations or whatever. They're being asked all the time for things. So just keep that in mind. Have patience.
I think it's good, Carol, too, to know in that, this is Mary Jo, on, what are the other agencies within your community? Who's out there doing things? So, so that years ago, I was working with, looking for jobs for students, obviously as a transition specialist. And I knew somebody who was doing it for the community college, and she had great contacts. And we'd call each other.
Mhm.
And she's like, "Oh, Mary Jo, the downtown athletic club is hiring. This is what they're looking for." And it's like, "Oh, I'll call them." And so we even shared when we, to work together, because the ultimate goal was get kids jobs.
Yeah,
And if you can share that with people, that's great too.
definitely. Most definitely. And there's even jobs that in the past, I've gotten great jobs, great opportunities for people, but I had no one to fill the job. So this business would call me and say, I have this great job. It's part-time, it's these hours. It was great, but I had nobody. So I'm like, what do I do? Well, I'd call my VR office and say, hey, VR, I have this job and I don't have anyone to put in it. Do you have somebody? So I'd share that knowledge with people and other organizations that could utilize that. Great. Yes. Thank you, Mary Jo. That's wonderful. And just so you know, going out, like, what are the other organizations that might be talking to these businesses, and why are you different? That's a little bit of my strategic side, but why are you different? What can you add or offer that they can't? Or, what sets you aside? Um,
That
so
huge thing about YTP following up for 1 full year afterwards is
exactly.
huge,
Yes.
huge, huge.
That support, and I think I talk about it a little bit on the next slide, but that support that you're going to be there, not just for temporary, although some of our supports are short term. It's not really short term. YTP is not. So yeah. So this is kind of my personal step by step. Now this is just a foundation. Obviously it's really brief. It probably is not going to ever be this clean or perfect, but this is kind of like ideally a step by step, what I would typically do. Obviously with probably some scribble notes and some circles, and yeah, anyways. So do your VR and YTP intake. Make sure that's good and everything's great. Knowing your student's employment goal, and if short-term coaching is needed, that would be really important to me. Some demographic research would be my next step. So where does the student live? Okay, well, Susie lives here and she's going to ride a bike to work. So what is she comfortable riding a bike? Like a mile? So we do a mile radius around her house. What businesses? I actually jump on Google and I will literally put in their address and I will look at businesses around their area. Hey, would you work at this place? It's really close to your house. Like, have you ever do shop there? Do you like it? We talk about those things. And their needed schedule. If I have a student that is in school until 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, they're going to have to work after that. Our place is open after that. If it's a little cafe that serves breakfast, it's probably not going to work for the student. We'll just not develop that relationship right now. That 10 plus 10 rule showed up again, but I create my target list of businesses. This is my plan of attack, is what I call that. Who am I going to attack first? And I research them. Don't forget that research key. Just like if you were job searching, you want to know about that business. So when you walk in there and you're job developing, you kind of already have in your mind their hours, what they're selling, or what they do. You want to know a little bit about the business before you walk in. At least I do. I personally like to know a little bit about. And then I visit those businesses. I said that I like to visit in person. That's still true. Even with mask, I walk in and I like to visit. Obviously, there's some restrictions, but if that was the case, I'd just call ahead or email ahead. And I like to find the hiring manager and corner them and talk to them, and discuss opportunities and supports. How can I support them? Why am I different than your staffing agency or your other, nonprofit organization trying to bring people as well? How am I different? That support piece. Well, I support students for a year. I support you as much as you need. Yeah, so those kinds of things. I ask about their hiring practices and what we need to do to get in the door. And then I do that with the student. I'd go in, apply with the student, whether that's paper or online or however. Or maybe the student can do it independently. Maybe, depends on the student. But at the same time, I'm doing some interview prep with them, at least if sending them some interview questions, practicing over Zoom. Earlier this summer, I had a student email me and say, hey, Carol, I have a job interview. I don't know how. I applied at this place and I got an interview. Help. So we jumped on Zoom. I emailed him the questions. I said, here's the questions. Think about them ahead of time, but I'm going to interview you as soon as we jump on Zoom. He got the job. So we just practiced on Zoom, but he got the job. So that interview practice is important. Revisit businesses with or without students. So I go in, I bug them, I find their hiring practices. I do that. Whatever they tell me to do, I do it. And then I go back in and I'm like, hey, Bobby, I came in. Remember we talked about it? Well, I had a student that was interested in the job. So we went and actually applied. Do you want the student's name? You're that in for the student. You're the connection. So depending on if you can take in the student, availability, or, I know they're, in school or something, just go in, visit with or without the student, whatever works best in the situation. Go in and rebug that hiring manager. Get your application to the top. And then once that YTP person, that student is hired, our job doesn't end. Just because we got the job, we're not done. We're better than that. We're not the, the employment agency that just drops them off and says, good luck. No, we check in regularly. Ask the employer how they want that to look. I have employers that want me to call them every Friday because they want to tell me how the week went. They want to troubleshoot, like, hey, oh my gosh, your person that you brought me, I tried 10 ways to tell them how to do something and it's not working. What's going on? Oh, I'll explain this. This is how this person communicates really effectively, or whatever the case may be. That was just an example off the top of my head. But, talk to that employer and say, what do you want it to look like? You want me to come in person? You want me to stop by while they're on clock or off clock? What time's their lunch around? Can I pop in, say hi? And then also the student needs your support too. That win-win. So check in with the student. Ask them how they want it to look like. Some students may not want you to stop by their job. That might be really embarrassing. I would be embarrassed. So ask them, hey, can I call you Saturday? I know your last shift is Saturday morning. Can I call you Saturday night and just see how you're doing? Or Monday morning, see how your weekend went? And keep that relationship. My last little note there is keep that relationship positive, even if the hire doesn't work out. Not every job is going to work. Not every job. I mean, that's of course our goal. But if you can keep both relationships positive with the employer and with the student's not going to be left behind, and that employer is not going to feel unsupported. So I've had people that started jobs and it didn't work out, but the employer wasn't upset. It was still positive. We talked about issues. We troubleshooted. They called me and said, hey, I got another opportunity. Months down the road, hey, I got 3 more opportunities. So keep that relationship positive, even if it doesn't work out. Do your best. So I don't know how I am on time, but key takeaways. These are
You got
make
15 minutes.
Sweet. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Blah, blah. But your key takeaways: support your business and your student. Keep that win-win in mind. Is this a win-win relationship? Always ask yourself that. Am I winning constantly? Yes, we're winners. This takes time. You can't fail, just keep trying. It takes time. Building good relationships takes time. We don't, walk in the door and everything is just magical, and we have to build it. Work on building relationships, not finding jobs. Now that might be, somebody else might tell you that's not job development, but I promise this is just my little note on it, and this is my little way, and it's been very successful. I build relationships, not just find jobs. In turn, my good relationships bring me lots of jobs. I had one employer I'm still buddies with today, and he was the general manager at a hotel. He hired like 15 people. And back in this time where I was working, it was all individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities. And at different times through our relationship, he hired multiple people. They grew and got promotions. Maybe it didn't work out, but we kept our relationship going. He's now the hiring manager at Lithia Motors, huge car lot here. So does that relationship end at the hotel? Nope. I'm going to go in Lithia next. There's a lot of car lots that need people. So they'll keep those relationships. Don't find jobs. Keep those relationships. Go in for that. Be honest and real. This is a little bit of me. I hope, that it works out for everyone. I'm really honest and real. I've even gone to an employer and say, hey, I don't know if this is going to work. Are you willing to do it? If I'm here to support you, are you willing to support the student? They meet this much of your job description, this much, maybe not, but can you try? And they'd be like, okay, Carol, let's do it. Let's try it. And great. It works. It worked out, or at least they got the experience if it didn't, right? And be reliable. If they say, hey, come back in a week, I am there in a week, on the day, on the minute, like I'm there. And if they call me and say, Carol, I need your help. Can you come in tomorrow? I will rearrange my schedule so I can come in and talk. I can come in and troubleshoot. Whatever they need, I am reliable. I am their source of help for great employees. That's pretty much those key takeaways. And we lead to questions.
I think, Carol, all I have is one on here, but I think that, the huge thing is the outcomes, and that's what we're looking for in YTP is students, young adults getting jobs. And we want to make sure that we're getting them set up for success.
Yeah.
Tia down at Myrtle Creek has a question. What does support sorry, I'm like you. What does the support for the employer look like? The example you gave was great, but do we have other specifics that we can give as positives for working with YTP?
So it depends on your area. That's a great question, but it depends on your area. And your VR, what kind of VR is looking for supports. So if they're hiring somebody through our supports, we have VR supports. So it could be a job coach temporarily. They could be a great support for the business. It actually saves the money and time in training that individual. They have to train a job coach for job coaches are specialized people that can learn a job very quickly, a good job coach, and they will in turn then train the employee. So the employer doesn't have to train as much, maybe just answer some questions here and there for the job coach. That's a great support. If your person doesn't really need a job coach, you can just help by troubleshooting. Conflict resolution. I do that a lot, which sounds like it's like a really free support. But if they have issues, I can help troubleshoot with them and work through those conflicts. Or I have background in job coaching. And I hope, there's someone else that can do this as well, or I maybe can do another class on it. I don't know. I can create jigs. I can create visual cues that not only the person that I'm supporting in that job can use, but everybody. So from schedules, stuff like that, like if I'm creating that for one person, who's to say the whole employees can't use that? Or step-by-step processes, stuff like that. I've done those for employers.
I think, Carol, too, one thing is we want to remember as a transition specialist, as a job coach, I mean, you could go in 1 or 2 times, but to fit that in your schedule for every day when the student is at the job is difficult. And that's not something that we, for YTP, have that expectation at all. In fact, I would discourage from doing it, more than 2 or 3 times. Then that would be a discussion with VR about paying for a job coach to come in.
Yeah.
Tia again from Myrtle Creek asked a kind of a follow-up, and is it a good idea to be building the community support before you have the student in mind? Have a stable of potential employers first, or several students to match first? That's kind of that chicken before the egg kind of thing.
Oh no, I love it. You're my kind of girl. You said it was Tina?
Tia.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tia, sorry. You're my kind of thinker. So yeah, this would be another different, I mean, I wanted to fit it in today somehow, but I didn't know if I had time. So I appreciate that you bring it up, because typically I like to build a portfolio. I take industries and I'm like, okay, here's 8 of our biggest industries in my area. And I have community connections in all of those industries. If not one, I have 2 or 3 or 4. At one point when I was job developing, I had this massive, like I am now, but you know what I mean? I had this massive map, and I'd go to greeters, reach out to those kind of connections. And I had industries and where they were relative to, the community. And I would get like different people on my side, on my team of my portfolio of employers. And so I kind of had them like all over the area so I could pull like, okay, this person lives near this one. I'm going to pull my contact there and say, hey, I have somebody in your area that's looking for a job. Do you have any? And it's exactly the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken, whatever you believe. But I love that line of thought. And then yes, yeah, build it. Build the portfolio, build those relationships. Anytime anyone gives you an opportunity to talk to them, talk to them. Build those opportunities. Yes.
And so having those businesses in your back pocket before the students, and
Yeah.
then as the students come in, you get to know them.
Yeah. And the only thing about that is that part where I said be real and be honest. Tell your business you don't have somebody right now. I mean, if you're building those relationships, they do sometimes get a little antsy and they're like, come on, Carol, you told me you had people ready. Where are they? I have jobs.
Mhm.
So you don't want them to get frustrated too.
Right.
So let them know, say, hey, I want to build a relationship with you. I want to be a resource to you as you're a resource to me. But right now I just don't have any people interested in this line of work.
Nice. We've got a question from Jennifer Zahn. Hi, Jennifer. It's so good to see your name again. Jennifer was a transition specialist before and now is teaching.
Oh.
So are there transition sites that have a blueprint plan for getting students to work experience during COVID? That's something we've been talking about actually down in Central Point. Yesenia and Ryan have been talking about that. Oh, somebody else. I love this question.
That question's really great. I personally don't have any that have one right now, but that is something that I know is kind of working in this area. So Mary Jo, you'll keep us up to date on these blueprints?
Yeah. Okay. Sally, are you there? Can you talk to that a little bit? We had talked with Ryan a couple weeks ago.
Oh, and I'm just going to put up my contact information for anybody. That's my last slide. I was going to stop sharing, but if you want my contact, there you go. Go ahead, Sally. Sorry.
That's all right. It's a long conversation because, each blueprint is connected to schools. If you've written your own individual blueprint for a plan that's not connected to school, it's all the metrics and requirements that are involved in it.
Yeah.
So making, each district has their own requirements based on what they do for their local and the state health department. And then that's required to be approved by your school board. So we've been working with some school districts on, I'm working with some school districts. I've been talking with school districts about how they're going to go about that, but most school districts haven't opened up so that students are even back to on-site learning and back out in the community yet. So we're looking at maybe a little pilot in an area and then see if that works. So once we've tried that, we'll be able to share more information with you.
Cool. Thank you. Maureen down in Brookings Harbor had a good one. I found a job for a student because I knew the employer and I read an obituary that they had a long-time employee pass away. He ended up working there for 2 years. So it's finding people wherever.
Yeah.
Larry up in Gaps has, do you get more positive outcomes from large corporations or from small mom and pop shops? That's one question.
Okay.
Why don't you answer that first and then
Sure.
we'll go to number 2.
That's a great question. And I'm going to give you a really mixed answer because yes and no. I've had some really great partnerships with larger corporations. Sometimes they're a little bit more tricky to get into. They want you to follow the same hiring practices that they do across the board. So some individuals that can be challenging for. For students though, I think is a little less challenging. served a population that had a little bit more limitations or a little higher impact needs. But I had some great relationships, but it's the same type of, I used the same model to get into those. As I visited, I asked for the hiring manager, I asked for HR, I made a connection through somebody that already worked there. I figured out their needs. What did the employer really, really need before I even brought them anybody? Developed that relationship with those bigger guys. Mom and pops, great places to work. I love building relationships with them. Sometimes it can be challenging on the other side is they don't have a lot of job opportunities. Maybe they have really small hours, but they do need somebody. Depending on your student, that might work great. So it depends. So I'm sorry that's such a kind of a flimsy answer, but I say go for both.
Yeah.
Try both, see what works best.
Sometimes the big box stores have a few barriers. So Larry's other part is it worthwhile to develop a relationship with the local work source office? Do they work well with students? If a student goes through the process with them, do you find that they get turned on to appropriate job leads? So have you worked with WorkSource?
I worked for WorkSource,
Oh.
actually. So that's one of my other nonprofits I've worked for. So at WorkSource, there are some really good things that you can pull from. I always say build a relationship. They offer free classes that could possibly help your student, but also they every week, I mean, down here it's a week. I don't know where you're from, your area, if that's the same, but every week they put out a job listings on iMatch. And so I build a relationship with the people that are putting out those ads, because there's a business services consultant, if they're still called that. It's been about 2 years since I've been there, but business services consultants, they put those ads in, they work for the employers, and they're putting those, hey, help wanted ads into iMatch. So if you build a relationship with them, sometimes they can get you in the door. They can get your foot in the door of that employer and for that opportunity. And they'll, you'd still apply the same way that everyone else does, but they might be able to get your application viewed and at least interviewed. I also use them for practice interviewing. You can bring in their professionals in the community that you can ask to do mock interviews with your students. I always say, yeah, build that relationship. Often those jobs can be self-referral, so the person can go into the employer themselves, or they can be referred by WorkSource. And it says that in the iMatch ad or job listing. So that's a great question, though. iMatch, I'd love to have. I know for my team here in Southern Oregon, I really want to get someone in to really explain iMatch and how that works. Yeah. Because there are some great opportunities that come out of iMatch. There's a lot.
Nice. There's some talk here about Fred Meyer, which is great. One was, do you tell the employer up front that the student will require a job coach? That's going to be a huge discussion if the student really does need a job coach, you've got to get that with voc rehab and get all that done. I don't know if you tell them up front.
So that
Carol?
being, how I would answer that. Of course, you have to have that discussion with your VR counselor. If that's really the plan, is they will have short-term job coaching.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh.
That's identified before they start to work. And that is an agreement with VR.
Uh-oh. I don't know if it's.
Am I here?
Carol, you're kind of breaking up a little bit, but we are at 3 o'clock. Excuse me, 3 o'clock right now. So I don't want to keep people on. No. Looks like some people have jumped. Oh, Carol, it looks like you are. I'm not frozen, am I, you guys? No.
You're not frozen.
No. Okay. I don't know if it was me that just lost my connection. Carol, it looks like we've lost that. So I am going to thank Carol profusely. She is,
That was awesome.
she's amazing. She just started with YTP and can't wait to let her loose in the schools when they open up and get going. So thank you all for your time. We will see you next month, if not before, for many of you. And by questions, call your technical assistance provider. We are always here to help. And anything, I don't know if there's anything else anybody else wants to add. Thanks,
Thanks.
Tia.
Thanks for coming.
All right.